Hello everyone. Today's poem is Shang Song, Yin Wu, the last poem in the Book of Songs. In general speaking, in an ancient Chinese mind, the order or the sequence is with a lot of significance because the first poem in Book of Songs was valued the most important by Confucius, namely 关雎，周南关雎，关关雎鸠，在河之洲。So that poem was praised, valued as the most important poems in the Book of Songs. Anyhow, nobody gave a word to these last poems. But anyhow, we can have some of the wild guess, or we can try our best to dig out if this last poem is with some of the important significance or meanings to the Asian people, not to people nowadays. So just imagine as ancient Chinese, the beginning was always the most important things. So that the beginning is something like the head to a human being, the most important things for a matter, for a process. And the end is the second, is of second importance or with equal importance to the beginning. In another very important classic books, 尚书, it has the words 慎决中. You should be with your utmost careful to your end. The end to a human is the death. For a human being, the end is the death. So, but here you can see that in some time 3,600 years before, the wisdom of ancient Chinese is you should be very careful with the end. So this means the end is very, very important, at least equivalent to the beginning. And later on, this saying has a lot of variations, and we have another very famous sentence in the Book of Songs. We have this song, 大雅荡. It has the word 靡不有初，先克有终. In the surface, it means very simple. Everything has its beginning, but very few has its end. So what does it mean? It actually means very, very few things has a good end. A creature, a human being. So we all have a start as a child, as a youth, and then grow. But very few has a good end, has its age. So this actually is a variation of the word in 尚书, 慎决中. So these two phrases also tell the same story. You should be with your utmost carefulness, with all your strength to lead your life, to do everything in your life. And thus you might have a good end. Otherwise, you will end up at nowhere. Okay, this is a little talk before this poem. And let's keep alert. Try to find out anything with significance in this last poem in the Book of Songs. This poem is also dedicated to the king Wu Ding, who was who restored the glory and the prosperity of the Shang dynasty in the middle term of the Shang dynasty. And he left a lot of stories in the history book as well. The title Yin Wu clearly indicated this poem is about King Wu Ding, because Yin refers to the capital, the place, and because Shang dynasty has several capitals, and among the kings who lived in this place at Yin, only Wu Ding was famous about his glory and his military exploits in those kings who had ever lived in this place. With the efforts of King Wu Ding, the land of Shang was expanded to the utmost level, and this poem is also part of his military exploits. Let's see. 陟彼殷武，奋伐荆楚. The king Wu Ding was swift and great. He conquered the place, the state, Jinchu, with his great effort. So the character Ta normally was explained as swift, very quick, fast. But the character in that time basically is a plot, is a picture. So, and along the histories, the logogram, the picture involved into different radicals and parts and became the characters today. But still, we have a very, very strong belief that the characters involves with very, very strict rules. And so the writings, the characters in the Book of Songs, the writing is almost same as the very original pictures if we can restore the radicals to a picture. But still, if we cannot restore the radicals, but still we know that each radical has its meanings. Let's see how we can treat the first character, Da, as a picture, and then we can trace down to each radicals, and then we can pinpoint a picture, and then we can plan this character as a logogram. So the left part is a hand. So the radical means a hand. And the radical in the upper right, Da, means great. So this is a very, very popular word in that time. Normally, this character refers to the king, refers to the Lord, who was with the mandate, and the figure is big, and he has the capability has the access to the heaven. So normally that's the character of the Da. Basically, is the character of a king, of a state lord. And then the lower right part means to go, to run. So the three radicals, it has a hand, it's meaning go, running, and it means very big, a great king. So you can see actually this character express a lot of things. He put his hands on his enemy, the enemy state, Jinchu, and he act with swiftly, and he is great. So that's the normal way, or my way to explain the character in an ancient time, if we can trace down every radicals. So the place of Jinchu has a great argument through the history, but basically, finally, most people believes it's part in the South Mountain, or someone believes it's even north, along the Yellow River, somewhere on the mountain. So basically, the people was so called as Jinchu was a tribe or is a state who lived on the mountains. Okay, the next sentence. 深入其阻，陟荆之旅. So the way to conquer the state of Jing, we have go further deep into their land, and we overcome a lot of the obstacles and roadblocks. So let me give you another example of my way to explain the Asian character by the radicals. So normally the character 阻, even in modern language, it means a roadblock, obstacle on the road. But if we look into this character to its radicals, the left part means a state, the right part means the ancestor or something of ancestors. The ancestor temple, the place have their ancestors, the cemeteries. So in that time, the ancestors is the most important things for the Asian Chinese. As I had said, for a live people, for a living people, the death is the most important things he should be focused on. And in the general idea, in the common sense, in a state, their ancestors is the most important things for the citizens, for the kings. So here, 深入其阻, actually from my explanation, from my perspective, means the troops of King Wuding has touched the land, stepped on the land of their ancestors, either cemetery or the ancestor temples, which means they conquered this piece of land completely, because the people of Jinchu, they lost their last piece of land, their ancestors, right? Okay, the next sentence. 有截其所，汤孙之绪. We have cut them straight, and that's the descendants of King Tang's business. So the character 绪 means the business, the goal, and so this is telling us this war, this conquering, is not by a random plan, by a wild dream. It's by the wish from their first king, King Tang. And King Tang was in the heaven. So this is an indirect way of saying that we have the order from the heaven. We have the mandate of heaven. And thus we follow the order, and we conquered the state of Jinchu. And we cut them straight, which means this place is rough, some rebellion, someone doesn't like us. So we cut them through, and finally this piece of land was leveled down. It doesn't mean to slaughter. It means if someone was against the Shang dynasty, was against the Shang king, they were cut, leveled. If you obey the order of the Shang king, okay, you are already leveled, right? So 有截其所 means they cut them straight. The next paragraph. 维如荆楚，居国南乡。Your people of Jingchu, you lead your life in the southern state. So be careful with the character Xiang. So with the character of Xiang, it means this group of people are civilized people. They have a tongue. And they have their organizations. Because in that time, basically, the land was divided into two parts, which means 相遂 or 乡野. So this place could be claimed as 乡. It means they have a town in the center, and surround the town there are a lot of the farmlands or citizens live there. So it's a piece of land, a state. And the opposite is 遂 or 野, which means it's not civilized. It could have some savage people live there, or it could be pure wild world without a people. So here it tells us 居国南乡. So those, it tells us that the state of Jingchu, they are civilized people. They have their tongue. They have citizens. Okay, continue. 昔有成汤，自彼氐羌，莫敢不来享，莫敢不来王，曰商是常. So when I recall our first king, King Tang, he was such a great king that nobody dare not to come to my place to make the sacrifice, to come to visit me, to pay a visit to me. And nobody dare not to claim that the Shang dynasty was the law, that the Shang dynasty had the mandate of heaven. And even those guys from 氐羌, 自彼氐羌. So let's go to the character. 氐羌 is a place, so basically it refers to the Qinghai province and the Gansu province. So these people are the nomad people, and they live in the somewhere in the mountains, high mountains or highland. And so you can see sometime almost 3,600 years before, the kingdom, the power of the Shang dynasty have reached to the edge of the Tibet. The character Wang in that time either means a noun, which means a king. It could also mean a verb, the action to serve a king or to act as a king. So in this sentence, it tells us 莫敢不来王, they dare not of not coming to the king. Here is a verb which means to meet the king, to serve their duty to a king. So in general speaking, the duty was explained as a vassal state. So in the core area of the Shang dynasty, the people is under the direct ruling of the Shang king. And the state in the far away place, like here, 氐羌, the place in Qinghai province, the people, they take the Shang king as their lord, but they don't have some of the direct engagement to the Shang king. But when they change their generations, let's see, the older king died, a new king was ascended the throne. He had to visit the Shang king and ask his permission. And until the permission from the Shang king was advised, the state lord of Diqiang became legal. So that's the meaning of a vassal state in the Shang dynasty. The state lord of the vassal state, they meet the Shang king just once in their life. And for other closer states, their state lord should meet the Shang king every year. So there's a lot of different levels in those times. And the most far away states, they have a very loose connection with the Shang king. And also character, 常. So in modern language, it means constant. And in the ancient time, it has the meaning constant, quite similar. But it's more of meaning the law of nature or the law from the king, because the king is from the heaven, right? He's the son of the heaven. So 曰商是常 means those states regard the Shang king as the law. Okay, the third paragraph. 天命多辟，设都于禹之绩. The heaven ordered many laws, and he facilitated the capital at the footprint of 大禹. The sentence 天命多辟 has two major explanations. One means the heaven ordered, named a lot of laws. So basically, this doesn't make too much of the sense, because the heaven only issue his order to the king only, and through the king, his order goes to many state lords, many laws. So here, I rather believe the other explanation is more suitable, which means the heaven gave its order from to time, so that heaven has a lot of orders in different times. And thus, you should always come to the king to follow the new orders, different orders from the heaven. So that makes sense. 设都于禹之绩. So the 禹之绩 is a very delicate character. It refers the footprint of 大禹. So 大禹 was basically was taken as one of the founders of the Chinese civilization. His greatest merit is to settle down the flooding of the Yellow River. So by settle down the flooding Yellow River, people can lead a peaceful life, and they have a stable and safe land to live on. So that's why Dai was taken as one of the founders of the Chinese civilization. So according to the story, Da Yu has been to the upstream, middle stream, and downstream of Yellow River. So 禹之绩 doesn't pinpoint to a dedicated place. It only tells us it's somewhere near the Yellow River. And that's the blast from 大禹. Okay, the next sentence. 遂是来辟勿予祸适稼穑匪解. So you should come to the law every year, and I won't do harm to you, and you should not let your farming work lose. You should not forget the farming work in the field. So this is the word to the Lord of Jinchu. So from this sentence we know that the king Wuding has defeated the state of Jinchu, and he take the state lord of Jinchu with him back to his capital to make a grand sacrifice to the heaven. So to let the heaven as the witness of this great achievement, that the state of Jinchu is under the Shang king, and which means he obeyed the order of the heaven. And at this ceremony, the king Wuding also has warning the state lord of Jinchu that you should come to my place every year. 岁是就是 the grand ceremony of the year. You should come here every year. I won't do any harm to you. So I'm doing good to you. So it's kidding, right? But that's the war, right? And that's the consequence of a war. So, but he's trying to make him as a good person. I would never do any harm to you. The character 谢 means to lose or to do something very loose, and it has another pronunciation. 解, that's the normal pronunciation. It has a third pronunciation as 害. So I would rather think it should be read as 害, because the 害 was only used in a place in Shanxi province, 海州, and that's the hometown of Guanggong. So the name of a place, the pronunciation of a name of a place name, it is with the most reliability, or it has the most possibility to stick to the very ancient pronunciation. Okay, the fourth paragraph. 天命降监，下民有严. The mandate of heaven ordered me to watch, to safeguard the people closely and strictly. 不僭不滥，不敢代皇. The mandate of heaven ordered me not to do something beyond my duties. I should stick to my position and duties, and don't do something too much, go beyond. Don't to be lazy, 怠. Don't to be lazy, and don't to hesitate. 黄 means hesitate. So from this two pair of sentences, we know that this is still the words from King Wuding, and this words is not only for the state lord of Jinchu. It's also for all the people in the under presence. So he used this chance to emphasize, to repeat his duty as the as the son of heaven, and all the orders came from heaven, and the heaven ordered him to watch, to safeguard the people closely and strictly. And the last sentence, 命于下国，封建绝服. So the heaven also ordered me to look after some lower countries. So lower countries means some country with lower positions, with minor priorities. So here, very probably, it refers to the Jinchu, because the Jinchu, the state of Jinchu, is a place not very close to the capital, to Shang people, and normally the remote state was regarded with lower priority, with less importance. So 命于下国 here means most likely it's telling something about the state of Jinchu. 封卷绝服. So the heaven ordered me to do something to the lower state, to put up a hill and to put up a flag for their fortune. 封, to put up a hill with earth, with mud. So this is the very original meaning of 封. 剑, to put up a flag, which means they have a troop, they have a tongue around the flag. So when the ancient people, when they build up a city or a military camp, the first thing first, to put up a flag, and then they start their construction work. So 封建, finally, it means to order a new state, to allocate a piece of land to someone. So 封建绝服, and finally, 封建became the term as a feudalism, 封建主义. So this is how the meaning of the word came from. 封建绝服 here, it actually is a very practical and exact things to build up a new state. So here, is it a paradox? The state of Jinchu was already there before the conquering, right? But the Shang kings think it's illegal. It's not a state. So this is something quite like the United States. The United States like to ignore the facts and take what is think as the facts. So this is almost the same as something happened in China 3,600 years before. And so the fourth paragraph basically actually is the order to the Lord of Jinchu as well. And the Shang king claimed that because of my order, or the order from heaven, you are a state, you are a legal state now, and I will bless you for your fortune. Okay, the fifth paragraph. 商邑翼翼，四方之极. The Shang states was so prosperous like the wind, and it go beyond to both four directions. So 翼翼 basically it means very prosperous, and it was well protected, because the 翼 means the wing of bird, but actually it was referring to the geographic shape of the Shang states, because the cold states of the Shang people was within the Yellow River. So the Yellow River is like a wing, two wings of a bird. The Shang states was within the wind of the Yellow River and was well protected by the Yellow River. 赫赫绝声，灼灼绝灵。This place is full of songs, a lot of songs, and this place was flooded with all kinds of divinities. So this pair of sentences actually is describing how the prosperity of the Shang states was. 赫赫绝声, it refers the population. There's so many peoples, and whenever you go anywhere, you will see people, you will hear people. So at that time, the prosperity was always closely linked with the prosperity of population, with many people. 灼灼绝灵, it refers the divinities, so many divinities, because in the ancient China, everything was with divinity, the river, the mountain. So in general speaking, when they're referring the divinity, unless very clearly point out that the heaven, the earth. So normally when they referred as general divinity, it always referring to the mountains, the divinity on the mountains, the divinity on the springs, the rivers, the divinity in some of the nature's wonders. So all kinds of divinities. And the prosperity of the divinities always reflect a fact that this place is a blessed land, a land of blessing. Thus, the divinities liked to stay at this piece of land. Okay, let's continue. 受考举宁，以保我后生. Our elder peoples and our ancestors, they are all very in a peaceful state, and all these will guarantee life for the following people, for our descendants. So here, let's go to the characters. 寿 refers to the people with elder age, and this is also a very, very key factor or pointer for the ancient Chinese, that these are the wisdom of the country, and a lot of elder people reflected a peaceful and a wealthy society. 考 refers to their ancestors. So 受考举宁, it reflects a very peaceful and wealthy country. And all these, what is all these? The geographic land, right? They are protected by the Yellow River, and the big country land go to the limits to 4 directions. They have a very big country. It's a big country. They have a lot of people. The population are so big, and the land is full of divinity, and they have a lot of elder people. They have their ancestors. All these will guarantee a good life for the following people. So the 5th paragraph basically is a blessing from the blessing word from the King Wu Ding. And this paragraph is also a turning point in this whole poem, because the previous 4 paragraphs is talking about conquering a war. They conquered the state of Jingchu, and they bring the state lord to their capital, and they hold this grand ceremony. And the King Wu Ding used this opportunity to put up a lot of the warnings to the state lord of Jingchu, as well as blessing. And he granted the state of Jingchu a legal state and with fortune. And in the 5th paragraph, in this paragraph, the King Wu Ding changed the angle totally. He's talking the Shang dynasty, the Shang country as a whole, and he blessed the Shang people, the country land, with all their assets, the land, the prosperous populations, the divinities, all kinds of divinities, the wisdoms of the elder people, the merits from their ancestors, and all these will guarantee and bless a very good life for the following people. Okay, the last paragraph of this poem of the Book of Songs. 陟彼景山松柏弯弯 I climb up that high mountain, bright and high mountain. The pine trees, the cedar trees was so huge and prosperous. And we cut the big trees, we transport those big trees, and we do the carpenter woodwork with full believing, with full respect. So that's the sentence. 事断事迁，方着事前. We cut down the tree, we move the tree, and we do the woodwork, carpenter work with respect. Let's go to the final sentence and see what's the final sentence tell us. 松觉有参，旅营有闲，寝城恐安. The rafter of pine wood is so long. The pillars, the space between pillars is so spatial. Restaurant was finally built, and which make me in peace and ease. So it looks like quite normal sentence, right? Let's try to dig out. First thing first, let's see what the traditional Chinese building looks like. And this is Chan in Chinese, 船子 in modern Chinese. So it's very long. The ancient building was very, very long and stick out, just like a cover, like a wing of bird. And here, the focal point is long. Something is very, very long. And Ying refers to the pillar. The most outstanding objects when you enter a traditional Chinese building, an ancestor's temple. So here it's the emphasis, the focal point is xian. Xian in here it means very spacious. The pillar is so big, and the space between the pillar is so big. And this is also by the code of conduct. The size between the pillars is by the code of conduct. And here, I'm very sure it's telling about the ancestor temple. And the ancestor temple has the most wide space between the pillars, and thus make the ancestor temple the most grand, the most big building of the time. And this is the most outstanding things when you come to a ancestor temple, because people are used to see the size, the height and the size and the space in a normal Chinese building. But when they goes to the ancestor temple, everything looks so differently. It's so big and so spacious. It gave you a immediate feeling. Here is something totally different. To make it short, the algorithm of the ancestor temple is 前庙后请. The ancestor temple is in the front, and at the back end is the sleeping room, is 请. That's the place the king or a state lord sleep at. So this consists the major lifestyle of a king. When he was awake in the daytime, he was dealing the state affair, the country affairs in the ancestor temple at the front. And when at the night time, he will go to the back end, go to the qing, go to the sleeping room to have a rest. And even when he died, we have a very, very old saying of 寿终正寝. So he reached to his age and he died in the decent sleeping room. So generally speaking, the king has several sleeping rooms. The sleeping room at the back of the ancestor temple was so-called as 正寝, the decent sleeping room. So if you want to have a decent death, have a good death, you first thing first, you should be reaching your age, not by some of the accident, a murder, a disaster, or something like that. You should reach your age. That's the first thing. And second thing, you should die in the decent sleeping room. So you know how important this sleeping room was to a king, to the Shang king, to Wu Ding. And in the history book, it was also has a story that before the king Wu Ding, the Shang dynasty was in a mess, and the ancestor temple as well as the sleeping room was not well maintained, or maybe not built completely. It was by the efforts of Wuding to build the ancestor temple together with the sleeping room well. And by this point, when Wuding conquered a new state, the state of Jingchu, a very, very important, tough enemy, and he bring the state lord of Jingchu back to his capital with a grand ceremony to heaven and to his ancestors, and together with the completely built fresh new ancestors temples, the king Wuding feel so peace and ease. What does it mean? Remember at the very beginning, I quoted the ancient idiom, the mottos, 慎决始. Shen Jue Zhong. You should be very, very careful. You should with the utmost careful to your ending, to your death. And when we're reading this poem, at this point of time, the king Wuding, of course, he knows the motto by his ancestors. You should be with the utmost careful to your ending. And now he said, I am with ease. I have a peaceful mind now. He don't care anything, because he think he has achieved his duty. He has maybe he has done much more compared to his duty, because his focus was not to the ancestor temple. That's the final destination when he died, right? His focal point was at the sleeping room. That's the place when he was still alive. So what does this poem finally tell us? It's hard to tell still. I cannot tell. Because from the surface, the focal point is the sleeping room was built and I'm in a peaceful mind. But by cross-checking the motto from his ancestors, he should not ease his mind when he's still alive. He should be with utmost carefulness before he died, right? But there's something still beneath the words, beneath the surface, because we know that the building was consist of ancestors' temples and the sleeping room at the behind. So maybe his focal point is to the ancestors' temples. That's something needless to say, and everybody of the time knows it very clearly. They build the ancestors' temple with their great respect, with their great believings, and then they build the sleeping room at the end, finally. So which means they have completely finished the whole set of work of this construction, the whole construction, the ancestor temple and the sleeping rooms, with the grand, beautiful ancestor temples. The king Wuding have a peace of mind. This is the place finally he would rest forever. and he was satisfied with his achievement, which made him feel proud and appeasement when he finally stayed in the ancestor temple after his death. So very likely the king Wuding want to avoid the ominous word of death, because when you're referring to the ancestor temple, it's something about the people have passed away. And in this whole poem, it's all about his own merits and achievements, and he cannot relate a live person to something of death. So in the surface, he refers to the sleeping room. That's something of a live person, right? That's the sleeping room for a live person. But anyhow, he used the sleeping room to double referring that no matter I'm still lead alive, or sometime when I died, I rest in the ancestor temple, my merits, my achievements is so great, which will finally satisfy and keep myself peace and ease in my mind. That's the final goal of ancient Chinese. That's the greatest goal of ancient Chinese, which means to settle down with a peaceful mind. So all in all, do you find out some significance in this poem, and which could be listed as the top poems with significance in the Book of Songs? 慎觉中, to have a great carefulness and respect to the ending, right? Okay, that's for today, and that's for the Book of Songs. Bye bye for now.